After LA Knight was attacked last week on SmackDown, Bray Wyatt has claimed he is not the mystery attacker, but it led to a new video from Uncle Howdy and teases of a possible new character coming into the Bray Wyatt storyline too, plus a mysterious cryptic phone call involving Wyatt appears on the screen. We've got all the latest details, Easter eggs, breakdowns, you name it, plus Randy Orton undergoes serious back surgery. He may never wrestle again. We've got the latest details on the Viper. The Bloodline are facing the Brawling Brutes at Survivor Series War Games this evening. We've got the latest on who has the advantage going into the War Games match. The SmackDown World Cup now has its finalists. We've got details on that. Becky Lynch is back on SmackDown. Sarah Logan has a new name. Plus, we've got the latest details on an injury suffered on SmackDown last night. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into. Whenever we have a Bray Wyatt promo, we have loads of little details, hints, Easter eggs to get into. So let's start off talking about the former Universal Champion and his appearance last night on SmackDown and his evolving storyline with LA Knight, because the story took a bizarre twist on SmackDown last night as Wyatt denied any role in Knight suffering a beatdown on the previous week's episode. In an emotional in-ring promo, Wyatt made reference to The Fiend, his alter ego, last seen in a match against Randy Orton at WrestleMania 37 last year, while explaining why he had no motive to attack Knight. Saying, quote, "My entire life I've been looked at like a rabid animal, but I'm not. And I know exactly what most people want to see out of me. They just really want to see the monster, right? They just want to see The Fiend." Big response from the crowd when he said that. "Well, that's not the man I want to be anymore." Wyatt reiterated that fans perceived him as a violent man because violence was the only language he had spoken in the past. "I have to be truthful," Wyatt said. "I am not the one who attacked LA Knight." Now at this point, Uncle Howdy then appeared on the Titantron to deliver the following message, saying, quote, "Open your eyes. They can make you believe anything. He'll make fools if you listen to him. A snake in a cage is still a snake. Wake up." Now, we're going to get into the finer details of this, but Uncle Howdy's appearance was interspersed with images of Wyatt's old personas, including his Wyatt family cult leader gimmick, The Fiend, and even his time as Husky Harris as part of the new Nexus. Furthermore, Uncle Howdy teased unmasking himself at one point as text said, "It's coming," and it flashed on the screen. We'll show you the screenshots in just a second. Now, the video also included a phone number, which we'll touch on later on. We're going to talk about what happens if you call that number. The Wyatt Uncle Howdy segment, though, was immediately followed by a backstage promo featuring LA Knight. This is what Knight had to say, quote, "Let me talk to you. I didn't get to enjoy Thanksgiving because 7 days ago, minding my own business, and then the next thing I remember is being pulled out from a pile of trash. Now, that human trash bag can vomit his lies to the world. It took me everything to come here. If I could appear in front of him, I'd ask him whose game it is. LA Knight's, yeah." Now, later on in the night, though, it didn't go well for Knight. Knight was once again shown laid out in the backstage area, presumably smashed against a door by a roadie box. The Knight Wyatt storyline began on the 11th of November edition of SmackDown, where Wyatt struck Knight with a headbutt in a backstage segment. Subsequently, Knight slapped Wyatt twice on last week's show, following which he was found lifeless amid a pile of garbage in the backstage area. Now, as I mentioned, there is a lot of details and a lot of Easter eggs in this Wyatt segment, in this Uncle Howdy promo that was displayed last night. So let's go through it. I've grabbed a ton of images. You can see them on the screen here. So this is when Wyatt's just finishing up his promo saying, "I did not attack LA Knight." We then see the Wyatt Moth logo, which we've seen several times when it comes to Bray Wyatt's recent return to WWE. We then see Uncle Howdy appear once again on the Titantron. We actually see what is quite interesting because there's actually like several masks involved here. So it would appear here that Uncle Howdy was wearing the Uncle Howdy mask and takes it off to reveal another mask, which is actually the whole Uncle Howdy gimmick, which Bray Wyatt is the guy underneath all of that. Despite rumors that it was Bo Dallas, I still believe it's Bray Wyatt. Now, as I mentioned, we then get glimpses of going way back, way back to Bray Wyatt, and he wasn't even called Bray Wyatt. His time on the main roster all the way back in 2011. Yes, this goes way back over a decade of when Bray Wyatt, then known as Husky Harris, was part of the faction The New Nexus, and when he was written off of television in the build-up to WrestleMania 27 in 2011 via Randy Orton. At the time, The New Nexus was led by CM Punk. Yes, that's CM Punk. And the storyline was that Randy Orton was eliminating all of the members of the New Nexus as they headed in to WrestleMania. And he would do this by delivering his signature punt kick to the head. Well, Husky Harris was the first person eliminated from the New Nexus, and he was sent back down to FCW, where he then developed the Bray Wyatt persona that he would eventually debut in NXT in 2012 and debut on the main roster in 2013. Now, once again, you see this image of the Uncle Howdy mask. I call it the Wario mask because it looks a lot like the Wario character from Super Mario. But once again, going back to this time of Husky Harris in the New Nexus, there was a period of time just when CM Punk took over the New Nexus in early 2011, whereby the old members of the Nexus kind of split off into the group that was known as the Core. Ironically, the leader of the Core, Wade Barrett, was on commentary for SmackDown during last night's show, but it was a backstage segment whereby CM Punk, as part of this initiation process, wanted his various members of the Nexus to go through these initiation processes I mentioned, one of which was Husky Harris being whipped with a leather belt by names you can see there on the screen, such as Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, and David Otunga. We then get another more clearer look at Husky Harris's back, Bray Wyatt's back, during that period of time in which he's whipped, and you can also see Husky Harris wearing the New Nexus signature armband at the time. Now, as I mentioned, we then see future images of Bray Wyatt once he debuted, or re-debuted rather, on the main roster around 2013, 2014 time, going back to the sort of the cult leader, the leader of the Wyatt family during that period. Interspersed there once again was images of Uncle Howdy. You could say this was quite symbolic because he's sort of saying to Bray Wyatt in that case, remove the mask. You've got to remove the mask. You have to remove the mask. Remember, what has Uncle Howdy's message been this entire time? He's been suggesting that Bray Wyatt is lying. He's lying to everyone, and he's lying to himself. Bray Wyatt can talk about following his path and no longer choosing the path of violence, but at the same time, he's also saying that Bray Wyatt wants to put the mask back on, because once he puts the mask back on, he will feel power like he's never felt before. And a lot of people think he's referring to The Fiend when he talks about putting that mask on. Again, we see other pictures of Bray Wyatt throughout his career, notably when he was in the Firefly Funhouse. Of course, we haven't seen this version of Bray Wyatt since his return. We haven't seen The Fiend also since Bray Wyatt returned to WWE at Extreme Rules back in October. We also saw an image of Bray Wyatt winning the WWE Championship. Of course, the first time he did that was back in 2017 at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view on the road to WrestleMania when he had that clash against Randy Orton. Once again, it's funny, isn't it, how Randy Orton weaves into this. Randy Orton is not a part of this storyline. We're going to talk about Randy Orton later on in the video, and actually some really serious news about his injury concerns. Once again, we get a really close-up look against this Uncle Howdy mask, and it's the mask that Bray Wyatt did wear when he returned to WWE at Extreme Rules back in October. It was also the mask that appeared in the background when LA Knight was attacked last week, and seemingly some people are suggesting that actually Bray Wyatt is saying, I didn't attack LA Knight because he believes that Uncle Howdy, or when he puts on the mask, he's someone else, he's someone different. He doesn't even believe that's himself. He doesn't believe that's Bray Wyatt. He thinks that's someone else completely, someone else entirely different. We also see another picture, once again, of Bray Wyatt inside the Firefly Funhouse. This was one of the early opening segments when we were having these vignettes and these teasers before the Fiend character was eventually revealed later on. That was back in 2019. We then have a picture of all of the sheep that followed Bray Wyatt, and this was during the storyline with John Cena back in 2014. I believe this was either in the build-up to WrestleMania or just thereafter. We had a series of promos whereby you'd have all of these sheep appear at ringside singing that he's got the whole world in his hands. Once again, that was part of Bray Wyatt's big feud with John Cena heading into WrestleMania 30. Now, this was really, really interesting here. This is what got a lot of people talking in this segment, is this image here of clearly what appears to be a pregnant female with the word sin on it. Now, we don't know if this is a part of Bray Wyatt's backstory, if we don't know if we're going to delve really deep into the past of Bray Wyatt, kind of akin to how The Undertaker did back in 1997 when we started to hear about his family life and we started to hear about his parents and his brother Kane. We don't know if this is how they're going to introduce someone like a Bo Dallas, Bray Wyatt's real-life brother, Wyndham Rotunda's real-life brother. That could be a certain situation, possibly, again. And it's interesting because this segment, this promo, this vignette, whatever you want to call it, of Uncle Howdy, didn't just feature only a male voice, but also also featured a female voice too. So a lot of people are speculating, actually, the fact that it did include this female voice, is this implying that some kind of female is going to be entering this storyline in the future? There have been these discussions about Alexa Bliss. Is she going to be involved? Of course, remember, at Crown Jewel, she was doing her backstage promo. The Wyatt Moth logo appeared. The following episode of Raw, she was making her entrance. Once again, it appeared in the background for a brief second. We know the history between Bray Wyatt and Alexa Bliss. The Fiend and Alexa Bliss. Is Alexa Bliss the key to the return of the Fiend? What does this mean? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, what you interpret that image to mean. Now, going back to this female, what do you see there? Because this was a really cryptic image, again, amongst many that flashed up during this Uncle Howdy promo. But does that look like a female to you? Possibly it does. I mean, to me, when I saw that, I thought that looked quite similar to a couple of things. One, the infamously dropped Sister Abigail Bray Wyatt persona, where he had the sort of veil over his face, but that doesn't look to be like the shape of Bray Wyatt. To me, that does look a bit similar, it must be said. That looks a bit similar to Alexa Bliss in the Wyatt Swamp fight back at Extreme Rules in 2020. Extreme Rules, the horror show, is what it was called, and Bray Wyatt had that match against Braun Strowman. It was a cinematic Wyatt Swamp fight, and during that match, Alexa Bliss appeared to Braun Strowman under the veil. It's actually how Alexa Bliss got involved in the Bray Wyatt Fiend ongoing storylines, and to me that looks similar. So I don't know, once again, if it's hinting at a female getting involved in this storyline. I'm not too sure. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below when it comes to that one. Once again, we have another look at Bray Wyatt during his quite famous storyline with John Cena heading into WrestleMania 30. Of course, John Cena defeated Bray Wyatt there, and it's notable, you get the late great Brody Lee, Luke Harper in the background. There have been rumors about WWE trademarking the term Uncle Harper for a possible future character. So again, is this a hint to that, or is it just a nice way to reference Bray Wyatt's late friend? We'll have to wait and see. We have another image of Bray Wyatt. This is from SummerSlam 2013, which was the Ring of Fire match against Kane. It was actually Bray Wyatt's first pay-per-view match on the main roster. It opened SummerSlam. Again, it was a Ring of Fire. It was a way of having an Inferno match without having to set your opponent on fire. Not the only time that Bray Wyatt has been involved in fire matches, of course. He famously had the Firefly Inferno match against Randy Orton at TLC in 2020, where the Fiend was set ablaze and returned several months later as the burnt version of the Fiend, heading into WrestleMania 37. We then once again have this picture saying it's coming. Now, to me, that once again looks to be the same pregnant woman, I believe. I mean, again, I might be wrong there, but I think that's the same pregnant woman that earlier had the "It's a Sin" on the stomach. So again, I don't know if this is an inclusion of Bray Wyatt's family. I don't know if this is a hint at Bray Wyatt's backstory. We're talking a lot about learning more details about Bray Wyatt in these vignettes, in these promos, talking about his health, his mental health. We'll touch on that with this phone call shortly. But again, is this a hint of what's to come? Once again, we get an image of Bray Wyatt as the leader of the Wyatt family. This might actually be just after he was the leader of the Wyatt family. You remember, he set the Wyatt family free after that. It was around a period of time in late 2014, early 2015, when he was feuding with The Undertaker initially. Obviously, the Wyatt family came back together, but there was a period of time where he was solo. This is in the old Wyatt family compound. Of course, the same compound, ironically enough, was burnt down by Randy Orton in the build-up to their match at WrestleMania 33 back in 2017. We then get this whole thing again, as I mentioned, about Uncle Howdy referring to Bray Wyatt as a snake, and it's quite interesting what he was saying there, saying that, you know, just because you're a snake in a cage, it's still a snake, basically implying, we see an image afterwards of the snake attacking a rat, essentially saying just because a snake is docile or calm or is trapped in a cage, a bit like Bray Wyatt is right now, he's still a snake, and you have to be careful because eventually he will still bite. And once again, it ends with the close-up on Uncle Howdy's face, which has his signature tear dropping down his eye. Again, I believe this is Bray Wyatt. I still think it's Bray Wyatt. You can tell it's Bray Wyatt's voice, but certainly it's interesting to see where they're going with this. Now, we also saw this flash up on the screen. This number here, 888-280-3999. Once again, 888-280-3999. Now, the eagle-eyed viewers amongst everyone, I mean, it wasn't difficult to spot this, but certainly the social media sleuths that have been fantastic during the entirety of all of this Bray Wyatt stuff did what most people would do, and that's call that number. And when they called that number, they got a really interesting surprise, because we got a really long call, and there's a male voice who reads out some really interesting stuff, clearly referring to Wyatt himself. Let's take a look at what this call has to say.
Patient suffers from delusions of grandeur, perhaps the most extreme incidents I've encountered. I'm concerned that no regimen of treatment or medication will be able to counter the imbalance of power in the patient's psyche. They're prone to disorganized thought patterns that communicate a sense of unmatched importance. And bouts of isolation seem to have amplified their inner monologue and honestly blocked out any outside voice. In short, the patient would need to think as highly of a medical practitioner as they do themselves, and honestly, that seems to border on the impossible. I've become concerned that this patient is such a danger to themselves and anyone they encounter that... Hello? Hello? Is someone there? Hello? Hello?
Spooky stuff, certainly, from that call. So if you couldn't hear that because it's a bit distorted because it's on a phone, I'll read it out once again. This is what the male voice says. Patient suffers from delusions of grandeur, perhaps the most extreme incidents I've encountered. Concerns that no regimen or treatment will be able to counteract the imbalance of pattern in patient's psyche. Prone to disorganized thought patterns that communicate a sense of unmatched importance. Bouts of isolation has seemed to amplify their inner monologue and honestly blocked out any outside voice. In short, the patient would need to think as highly of a medical practitioner as they do themselves, and honestly, that seems to border on the impossible. I've become concerned that this patient has become such a danger to themselves and anyone that they encounter that, hello? Hello? Is someone there? Hello? And then the line cuts off. So you make your own determination. Is that how Bray Wyatt was allowed back to WWE? Was he, I don't know, hospitalized? Was he, I'm not sure. Was he in a psych place this entire time? And that's how he got out. I'm not sure. But it implies a much deeper, darker side to Bray Wyatt that we've really yet to see. And we've only scratched the surface when it does come to that. Let me know your thoughts on all of this Bray Wyatt stuff in the comment section below. Truly, it is fascinating. Randy Orton. We did talk about Randy Orton a couple of times, talking about Bray Wyatt just there. And we've got a big update, and it's not too good for the Viper. This comes from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select. And that is that Randy Orton is not headed back anytime soon. Randy Orton, of course, has been out of action since late May, where he and RK Bro teammate Matt Riddle dropped the Raw Tag Team Championships to the Usos. Shortly thereafter, it was reported that Orton had a significant injury and he was expected out throughout the end of the year. And now Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp are reporting more on that. Sean Ross Sapp is reporting that Randy Orton required fusion in his lower back that would keep him out of action for an extended period of time. The surgery has already happened, though we don't know when at this point. His wife, Kim, had posted a picture of him around the operation. However, there were some in WWE that told Fightful they'd be fortunate to have him back after such a long career and the significance of the injury, basically suggesting this could be it for Randy Orton. Fightful have also heard from some in the company that say that when he was initially injured, Randy Orton insisted he would be eventually able to return. However, there are no creative plans in order for Randy Orton and no timetable for his return. As of now, Orton is contracted through 2024, though we don't know if contract time could be added or frozen due to the injury. It's a really, really, really significant injury, this. A lower back fusion is the same surgery that Shawn Michaels had on his back. Now, of course, Shawn Michaels was eventually able to return, but at the same time, he was out of action for 4 years because of that. Randy Orton seemingly is insisting that he will be back, but he's not going to be back for WrestleMania, I don't think. We are looking at a situation, I think, that, not that it's going to be lucky if Orton comes back. I think he thinks he'll be able to, but we shouldn't be surprised if maybe he's determined that he can't. This is a real serious injury. And I think maybe it might be a case of putting him and maybe Big E in the same boat of, we hope he can come back, but we also have to live with the reality that he might not be able to. It's that serious, and it's horrible to have a Hall of Fame career end like this. And I know that he wants to be sort of the longest, or the superstar, the top star, because Randy was a top star, who's been at the top for the longest period of time. You know, people like John Cena kind of almost set that record of being on top for such a long period, but then Randy Orton overlapped everyone. So this is a really horrible thing to hear. Again, the hope is, fingers crossed, that he can come back. But also at the same time, what's most important is his health. He's got a big family, young children, and again, hopefully he can be healthy enough to be with them and eventually later on come back to the ring. Last night on SmackDown, we saw a match that determined who has the advantage in the men's War Games match tonight at Survivor Series. Now, heading into the match, there was a backstage segment that kind of teased some bloodline implosion possibly tonight in Boston. Kevin Owens saw Sami Zayn outside the Bloodline's locker room. Zayn attempted to shoo him away. However, when Owen paused to question Zayn when the Bloodline would be turning on him, he suggested a turn of his own. He said, look, if I were you, I'd turn on Roman Reigns before he and the Bloodline could even have enough of Sami Zayn and cut him out themselves. As Owens left the scene, it was apparent that from behind the locker room door, Jey Uso had been listening. This is when Jey came out to confront Sami about his time of arrival, and also he crucially asked if he had spoken to anyone since arriving. Sami lied to his face and said he had not. So, leading to some suggesting, could this be the moment, could this be the time at Survivor Series tonight where the Bloodline does indeed turn on Sami Zayn and kick him out of the group? Well, it was a match in the main event that saw the Usos facing off against Sheamus and Drew McIntyre to determine who would win the advantage. And after a crazy finish that saw Sami Zayn get involved and nearly hand the Usos the victory, and then the referee saw Sami Zayn holding up the championships, threw Sami Zayn out. It allowed Kevin Owens to get in and get a stunner. It's actually the Brawling Brutes who now have the advantage heading into Survivor Series, and clearly they're teasing that at some point the Bloodline is going to turn on Sami Zayn, and clearly they're teasing at some point it's going to be Kevin Owens that's got to come to the rescue and snap Sami Zayn out of it, and they are going to be the ones that are going to be feuding with the Usos for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships. A storyline that has actually been planned since the summer, but the success and popularity of Sami Zayn put those plans on hold, but it would appear we're finally going to see the culmination fairly soon. The SmackDown World Cup now has finalists, and Braun Strowman, for the first time since returning to WWE, lost a match to a flippy flopper. Yes, a flippy flopper. Braun Strowman dominated Ricochet for the majority of the match until Intercontinental Champion Gunther and Imperium made their way out to the ring. They jumped Strowman, or attempted to jump Strowman, which allowed Ricochet to execute a quick roll-up on Strowman for the victory. After the match, Imperium surrounded Strowman as Gunther nailed a big boot on the monster of all monsters. Despite the social media beef and disrespect by Strowman towards the smaller wrestlers, Ricochet made the save, fighting off Imperium, and once again Gunther ran away from Strowman. Despite Ricochet winning this match, and the final, of course, will be Ricochet versus Santos Escobar next week on FS1 to determine the number one contender to the Intercontinental Champion. I think Ricochet will win that match. He will face Gunther. Gunther will win, but they're building to something else. They're building to Strowman versus Gunther, clearly. I think initially the plan probably was for Strowman to win the tournament, but then I think given maybe some of his comments, the social media stuff, this is WWE's case of punishing him, saying, so we're still going to continue with it, but, you know, be respectful, be careful. We would have given you the trophy. We're not going to give you the trophy this time round. And they had Strowman raise Ricochet's hand that you can see on the screen right there. That is a good example of how you handle and squash social media beef and backstage beef very quickly. A lesson to learn. Becky Lynch also returned last night on SmackDown. She'll be the fifth and final participant on Bianca Belair's War Games side. We did a full in-depth video on this, so I'm not going to spend too long talking about it, so be sure to check that out on the channel. That dropped earlier today. Sarah Logan has a new name, and it's Valhalla. Yes, last night on SmackDown, the former Riot Squad member was referred to as only Valhalla going forward prior to the Viking Raiders match against Hit Row. It must be said, despite all of the controversy about her possibly stealing the look or copying the look from Maxie Impale, the entrance last night for the Viking Raiders was fantastic. They dominated and easily defeated Hit Row, and it was very impressive. Valhalla is a great name, obviously. It was a great entrance, but there is still controversy over the look, certainly. Finally, Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler injured Raquel Rodriguez last night on SmackDown. There was set to be this tag team match heading in, of course, to Shotzi facing Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship tonight at Survivor Series. But backstage, Raquel Rodriguez was attacked by Baszler and Rousey, leading to essentially a 2-on-1 match. But eventually, Raquel Rodriguez came out back to the ring, and Rousey and Shayna Baszler injured them even more before winning the match. I thought Rousey and Shayna Baszler's promo was very awkward, very awkward, and it's just very flat. I mean, it works still because we're going to get heel Rousey versus babyface Becky Lynch at WrestleMania next year, which is going to be good, but yeah, not too sure about all of this. But there you go, guys. That's the latest WWE news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.